Member for Arima, Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me, of course, thank the Honourable Prime Minister for my birthday greetings, which was well received and accepted. Mr. Speaker, I just want to thank the Honourable Prime Minister for the clarification. The two previous speakers from the opposition, our main concern was the issue of an explanation for Section 4B and Section 4C. We have been asking exactly why those two sections were included in the bill. And we have made it abundantly clear that we have absolutely no objection to 4A, which is, and I think I need to repeat it so that people will be absolutely clear. Section 17.3 of the Constitution is amended by deleting the words his parents is or was, but for his parents' death, and substituting the word his parents or grandparents is or was, but for his parents or grandparents' death. We have absolutely no objection to that. We absolutely support the inclusion of grandparents. Our concern is in 4B and 4C. And we have asked for clarity on that. We are of the view that what the government indicates it wants to do can be properly done by that section only. Now, Mr. Speaker, in saying that, there are a couple points I would like to make. I also want to say that it is important information given to us by the Honourable Prime Minister and the Honourable Minister of Sports as it relates to the reasoning for the bill, which is in essence that the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association at some point in time would have had a meeting with the Honourable Minister of Sports and the Prime Minister, and as a result of this, the bill was drafted and the bill is here before us. I listened very carefully to the Honourable Minister of Sports, who in his contribution, together with the Honourable Minister, the Honourable Member of Parliament, is it Arangwe St. Joseph, which in essence gave the reasons for the bill, and focused, of course, on the issues of remittances, the competitive disadvantage in which Trinidad and Tobago finds itself, made reference to leveling of the playing field, keeping up with regional peers, the fact that Trinidad and Tobago has fallen behind, bringing back talent home, expansion of our national pool, and so on and so on. Mr. Speaker, having said all of that, I really would like my colleagues to explain, therefore, why did Trinidad and Tobago do well way back in 1973? In 1973, at that time, we had some very outstanding players. And I think those of us who follow football very closely would know that at that time, Trinidad and Tobago would have been denied, if I recall, 3 goals by the referee.
It's 3.
Yeah, it could be more, but I remember at least 3.
In Haiti. Yeah.
In Haiti.
Yeah.
What is interesting is at that time, of course, we know we had players like Gally Cummins and Archibald and others. If we come back now to the strike squad in 1989, and you know it is important for us to discuss that because I just want to say to the Honourable Minister of Sports and the Honourable Prime Minister that we focus a lot on us being at a disadvantage because of so many other countries now using this rule where, you know, once you have a grandparent who has been born here, then you can apply to play for Trinidad and Tobago. But let us also be mindful of the message that we are also sending to our local footballers and our aspirants. Very, very important. Because we will remember that Gally Cummings at the time, who was the coach of the strike squad and worked in the Ministry of Sports and was simply seconded as a coach, never really paid the kind of fees that the coaches are being paid at this time. But every single player was locally born, was playing in Trinidad and Tobago, and not one of them came from abroad. And we remember that fateful day when we didn't qualify, 1-0 by the United States, but a lot of other issues that those of us may follow football would remember. The changing of the referees to referee that match between Trinidad and Tobago and the United States, almost very abruptly changing the results. And of course, people subsequently blaming them that they came from San Fernando. Michael Maurice said it's sun in his eyes, all sorts of things. And of course, the fact that we had a stadium that was overcrowded. So, as we debate this bill and we speak about the disadvantage in which we find ourselves here in Trinidad and Tobago, because we don't, at this point in time, have access to, as the member for Arangwe St. Joseph said, that there are about 40 players who are waiting for the passage of this bill so that Trinidad and Tobago will now have the access of 40 other persons. I want to say to the Honorable Minister of Sports, to the Honorable Prime Minister, that it is equally important for us to say to our locally trained players and those who are born here that that commitment to football is equally important. Because the same Dwight York and Russell Latapy of which we speak now, they were born here, they developed their skill here, they developed their talent here, and they made Trinidad and Tobago very proud. So I know we keep speaking about our comparisons from other countries, Ireland, Jamaica. As a matter of fact, the Jamaica national team, the players are almost exclusively from out of Jamaica. But we understand that football has the impact locally, globally, to unite countries. It is one of the sports, a $1 billion enterprise. We know the kind of money that players are making, so we understand that. But I'm saying it is equally important for us to remember and ask ourselves, whilst you can land in Trinidad and Tobago maybe the 2 nights before, football is still about synergy. It is still about ensuring that players understand each other, and that is why the strike squad and the Soca Warriors did so well. So I want to, and I'm happy that the Honorable Minister of Sports also made reference to development of football. But as a country, we also need to ask ourselves, how did we find ourselves here today where our quality of football, our players, comparatively speaking, what is the difference between years ago and now? And, Mr. Speaker, I want to suggest that we need to look very closely as to the absence of a professional league. We need to look very closely and go back to the days when we had the Port of Spain Football League, the San Fernando Football League, the North Football League. And we need to ask ourselves, what is different? Why haven't we not been able to have a professional league? Some people say the lack of sponsorship, some people say a lack of other things. But I'm simply saying that those issues are equally important, because we understand that a lot of the players that are going to offer themselves to play for Trinidad and Tobago, it is because they cannot make the team where they presently live. And the teams, of course, for the countries in which they are born. So I want to strongly suggest that it is equally important, and I'm very glad that when we give the example, the analysis, the rationale for this particular piece of legislation, it is rooted in sports. But I have now heard the Honorable Prime Minister speak to an expansion that is a lot more than just sport, and not about a tie with your birth and about the place of citizenship of your parent and your grandparent. Now, in essence, when we saw the article by the Honorable Minister of Sports some time ago, as I recall, and what the population is expecting is that this bill really has to do with football, sports, and citizenship, and the relationship between the player who's applying to play for Trinidad and Tobago and his relationship between his grandparent. So we know, as was mentioned by the Honorable Minister of Sports, that it had to do with the fact that if you applied before 17, fine. Once you cross 19, there was a challenge. Okay, so we understand all of that, that is clear. But I'm saying that, therefore, the expectation of the population based on what was in the public domain, what is being presented here, is much, much more than football. And that is why we have been asking the question about B and C. Now, the Honorable Prime Minister went on to share her own personal situation about having had to go to England and having to go to Jamaica and Barbados to live and to migrate. I doubt there is anyone in this Parliament today who does not have a family member who has had similar circumstances. The Honorable Prime Minister indicated her own personal challenges as it relates to her upbringing and her parents and poverty who would have influenced her going to these 3 different countries. I can speak about my both parents who also migrated to the United States at a point in time, and my sister as well. And if we speak about the fact that that is what has influenced people going to other countries, I mean, we understand that Trinidad and Tobago as an independent country, we go back to slavery, we go to indentureship, and we know that all of those things influence the building of our economy and our country. So that we know the role migration plays. We know the role migration plays in almost every single country in the world. And the Honorable Prime Minister then went on to say that as it relates to her own constituency in certain areas, notwithstanding 2 oil booms, that there has been little changes. But Mr. Speaker, let me make it abundantly clear that there is absolute evidence that those 2 oil booms, and even when we did not have money, that the governments of Trinidad and Tobago, and more particularly the People's National Movement, developed policies, principles, infrastructures, and development to make Trinidad and Tobago what it is today. And why do you think they want to come and play for Trinidad and Tobago if we give this impression that, well, things are so bad and all of that? Why do they want to come? Why do they want to be associated with Trinidad and Tobago? As the Honorable Prime Minister said, why do they want to wave that red, white, and black flag? And why it is we wanted to ensure that we could have celebrated independence. It is for all of those reasons. So the same diaspora of which we speak, and the fact that I agree with her totally, absolutely totally, that Trinidad and Tobago has been responsible for developing Carnival in the United States. We have been Canada, England, Germany, many African countries, Japan. And I also agree that reference being made to our instrument, our national instrument, and the role that it is played. So notwithstanding whatever challenges you talk about Laventille, the instrument was developed in Laventille. And so unfortunate that as we speak about that instrument, I read recently where NGC is no longer sponsoring Hoover Joylanders, TNT Sweet Tassa Steel, and Labre Nightingales. That is how we speak. So unfortunate. So on the one hand, we speak about the development of our instrument. We speak about the role that the instrument plays. And when people go to Trinidad and Tobago, we talk about All Stars in Times Square. We talk about Whitco Desperados in Carnegie Hall. And we know that these are very important issues. We know that you can go to any part of the world and a Trinidadian and a Tobagonian is making a difference, whether it's in Microsoft, whether it is in the stock exchange, whether it is in the universities, whether it is in the hospitals. We understand that whether it is in Britain or whether it is in New York, we understand that people know that our nurses and our teachers are second to none, and they come and recruit them each and every year. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to make the point that, and I want the public to understand, that supporting this bill and including grandparents for the purposes of persons being eligible to be able to play for Trinidad and Tobago, we have absolutely no problem. Our problem is when you include two sections, Section B and C, and we can find no country in the world, not one, with any similar sections. Now, I'm not saying Trinidad can't be unique, I'm not saying we can't be creative. We can be. But then if you come and you tell us it's about football, and then all of a sudden it is about everything, something is wrong. And when, therefore, the Honourable Member for Dago Martin West expresses fears, it's a genuine one. And we have the right, as the opposition, to express those fears. So I fully understand and appreciate the issue of remittances. One can do the research, whether it's the World Bank, whether it's the IMF, whether it is the CDB, whether it's the Inter-American Development Bank, that they have done the research about the benefit of remittances. I have no issue with that. I understand that very well. As I said, that football is a billion-dollar industry, and we understand. I mean, those of us who attended football recently, or cricket. As a matter of fact, not this last match when we played Curacao, the one before, the fire services actually stopped people from entering the stadium. So we know what happens to the people of Trinidad and Tobago when we are playing cricket, when we are playing football, when there's athletics. We understand the joy, the passion, the love, and we also understand the pain when we do not succeed. We understand, as I said, what happened to us when we looked and saw 3 goals disallowed when we were playing Haiti. We understand what happened when we were on the verge of qualification And you heard all sorts of things. We understand. We understand when TKR loses, we are looking forward as they play in Antigua, and as the Honorable Prime Minister congratulated them, and I join with her as well in congratulating them. We understand what it does to our country, but that does not mean that we should not inquire, why are we making this so wide? Why? That's the issue. And Mr. Speaker, as I said, we got that clarity that it is, they talked about brain drain, but we also wonder if it is that we use migration so much as one of the justifications for this. It may very well be that our CPEP and our URP workers who are now being terminated at will may have to consider that as their only option. And while some people may have an individual to purchase a ticket for you there and a ticket for you here to go abroad, some of our vulnerable do not have that luxury, Mr. Speaker. I will not be distracted.
Member, I think the time is coming for the tea break.
Very well.
Thank you. Members, we will now break for the tea break at 4:30, and the House will resume at 5:15.
Of original time?
9 minutes of original time.
Thank you,
not
thank
including any the 15 minutes.
Yeah, I should finish by then. Thank you kindly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want, I'm more or less concluding, but I wanted to make the point that, in my view, and the view of the opposition, is that the effect of this Constitution Amendment Bill 2025 is that once your parent or your grandparent was a citizen by any mechanism, let's take, for example, descent, even if neither of the parent or grandparent was not born in Trinidad and Tobago, that person is automatically, by this bill, entitled to citizenship. Mr. Speaker, this bill also removes the requirement that your citizenship can be traced by the birth of your parent or that of your grandparent. And I know that several of the speakers made reference to the 300,000 persons from our diaspora and the challenges they face, whether it be in terms of investment, whether it's in terms of going to the university, and several others. But, Mr. Speaker, the fact is that if we were to examine what presently exists, there is nothing that stops an individual with any relationship with someone here in Trinidad and Tobago from accessing the University of the West Indies, or whether it be investment or a number of things. Yes, you may have benefits, but to give the impression that the bill or the law as presently crafted and existing, that all these challenges exist, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that is not the case. Mr. Speaker, I also want to make the point that several of the speakers on the government side made reference to India, Ireland as two of the countries where similar pieces of legislation exist. Yes, similar pieces of legislation exist. The main thing for India as well as Ireland is still the issue of the citizenship of the parent or the grandparent, and that is where the individual is going to benefit. This legislation, in my humble view, is totally different. And I also want to make the point that, and I hope you would just allow me, Mr. Speaker, and it has to do with me finding out just a short while ago that there is in truth and in fact an amendment to the Citizenship of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago Act, which is what my colleague next to me was making reference to. We received that at 3:12. So in truth and in fact, I don't want to give the impression that I'm going contrary to what you said, right? But save and accept that there is going to be that amendment which we would not have had notice of before, okay?
I said the objection which was being made was that the minister should not be allowed to refer to the Citizenship Act if the act was not being amended. My view on that was no. Legislation can affect other legislation, and in the context of an amendment, you're entitled to refer to the other legislation. I myself have just seen the proposed amendment.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to appear, I'm treading very gingerly. What I understood him to say is that the Honorable Minister of Sports was actually referring to the amendment. Yes, which we didn't have.
No, he wasn't. He did refer that Section 5 would have to be amended as would be necessary if the Constitution was amended. And I said, in the context of forecasting a proposed amendment, that was entirely proper in the circumstances. It was in the limited context that the member for Diego Martin Northeast was objecting to reference to a proposed amendment. As it is, the proposed amendment is coming sooner than we thought, so which we will deal with at the appropriate stage.
Okay, well, the only issue I think that put us in a little bit of a difficulty is, of course, we now have it, and the others would not have had the benefit of contributing, right? But, okay, Mr. Speaker, therefore, I just wanted to say that to ensure that it's very clear that if you look at this bill where the discussion and the analysis to a large extent focus exclusively on football, when you look at the FIFA rules and the international athletic rules, this bill in its present form does not help athletes and it does not help footballers in terms of the eligibility to become a citizen, simply because when you look at the FIFA rules and you look at the international athletic rules, those footballers and athletes applying to become citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, in truth and in fact, simply will not qualify, because FIFA and the international athletics have their separate rules that basically says your eligibility still has to be linked to your parent and your grandparent. And that does not exist in this piece of legislation. So, Mr. Speaker, I just therefore want to close by saying what our concerns are as it relates to this bill, and that ideally we are of the view that the particular section that I mentioned, which is Section 4A of the amendment to the Constitution, properly gives all the eligibilities for the sports persons to apply to become citizens as well as to qualify to represent Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.